According to them, he's saying that he heard a radio report, and they take such significance from the fact that he said they did it instead of he did it. You want to know where investigator Wright's coming from? You listen to that whisper yourself without a transcript and see what you hear. Not a partisan, not a person who's an employee of their office. See what you hear on that tape. It makes absolutely no sense. That February 7th conversation, the conversation, not the transcript, does not contain any order to assault John O'Connor. It does not. Now, you listen to Anthony Guerreri's reaction after the so-called bust remark, and you'll recognize from the reaction of Anthony Guerreri, because you want to talk about context, you want to talk about fair and impartial judgment of conversations, you listen to the reaction and you will recognize that that is no reaction to a mention of violence. But what about someone else's reaction? You heard testimony of Frank O'Hara. I think it was Thursday or Friday. And you heard Mr. O'Hara testify, Agent O'Hara testify, that he heard this conversation on February 7th, 1986. Now, don't let him tell you something. I'm going to put this in front of you right now. Don't let anybody come to you and say, well, they were able to make out later what it said after they enhanced the tapes. O'Hara said, this is what he heard on February 7th, 1986. This is what he was able to hear on February 7th, 1986. And what did you hear from more than one investigator? What did you hear from more than one agent? And there's no question about it, and they can't quarrel with the proposition. It is the policy of that agency, OCTF. It is the policy of any law enforcement agency. If they hear information that a person is in physical danger, they will warn that person. So I said to Mr. O'Hara, you heard the conversation on February 7th, 1986? You heard that conversation? Did you go out and did you warn John O'Connor? And he said, absolutely not. And John O'Connor was here on the stand, and I said to him, you spoke to the police the day before you were shot. You spoke to this office the day before you were shot, on May 6th, 1986. Did they ever say to you that you were in danger? No, he said. Did they ever say to you that you were going to be busted up? No, he said. Did they ever say to you that your kneecaps would be broken or you'd be shot? No, he said. Not up to the day that he was shot did they warn him, because there was nothing on those tapes to warn him about. Their whole theory does not work, because there is no connection between February 7th and what happened on May 7th. And any time that Mr. Cherkasky wants to talk about the tapes and say this means this and that means that, very, very simple. You think to yourselves, well, if this meant this and that meant that, why didn't you warn him? Why didn't you warn him? Well, let me tell you something. What was done to that restaurant, bankers and brokers, was wrong, and you heard testimony about it. Those union men had absolutely no right to cause that damage. They were the bullies. They were the bullies, not John Gotti, not Anthony Guerreri. They were the bullies. But what happened after that? You know, Mr. O'Connor told you. And Mr. Cherkasky, he brought it out in his cross-examination. It wasn't an answer he was looking for. And it wasn't an answer that he liked. But he brought out from John O'Connor that there was conflict in the union. And he brought out from John O'Connor that there was trouble in that union. They had some wiretap going on local 608's phones. There was trouble in that union. They rely on their experts. They put this O'Hara on the stand, and he sat before you and he said, you know, I'm an expert on organized crime. He said, I'm an expert on corrupt union activity. Do you understand that these experts are employees of their office, the experts? The next time, I'm going to put on my paralegal, Vivian Brady. She'll be an expert on government overreaching. She'll be an expert on prosecutorial overzealousness. That's what she'll be an expert on. They parade these people, they put them on the stand, and they say, I'm an expert. An expert? So I said to O'Hara, listen, Mr. Expert, you who are an expert on corrupt union activity, what about the union elections in 1986 and an internal struggle in the union in 1986? I said, oh, I'm an expert, but not on 1986. It's like on Jeopardy. Don't get that 1986 category. I don't want that 1986 category. Don't throw any questions out of 1986. I'm an expert, but don't ask me about what was going on in Local 608. I'm an expert, but I don't know anything about John O'Connor having disputes with anyone else. The expert? Are they kidding us or what? John O'Connor came in here, and when Mr. Cherkasky went beyond his direct examination and started asking him questions, and John O'Connor asserted his Fifth Amendment privilege, and you heard the instructions on that. You know that there is a Fifth Amendment privilege, which is a basic cherished right in this country. And why did he do that? What did they say? He's afraid of John Gotti? That's why he took the Fifth? He's afraid of them. They have him, their victim, under indictment. They have their victim in a situation where they're trying to put him in jail. So what's he supposed to do? Oh, how much is your house worth? Well, that's important to who shot him. That's very important. What were they trying to infer? That John O'Connor was an associate of organized crime? Is that the inference? And the union, the O'Hara, the expert, tells you that the union was controlled by organized crime? That's the theory? Well, if that were so, why on earth would John O'Connor break up the restaurant, if he broke up the restaurant? Because I went back and I read this Bradley's testimony. It's not even clear that he did anything more than being there that day. That's not clear. There's something going on in that union that we don't know about. But this theory makes absolutely no sense. If they want to suggest to you that John O'Connor is involved in organized crime, why is he breaking up this restaurant? It makes absolutely no sense. Mr. Petrakis, all of a sudden he's testifying here, he doesn't have an interpreter. In the grand jury, he had an interpreter. And I asked him, didn't Mr. Modica, when this trouble started, tell you, please join the union? If this were mobsters controlling the union, why would he say join the union? They didn't bring that out on direct. Mr. Modica, who was the manager or owner of Bankers and Brokers, told the contractor, join the union. These theories make no sense. You know, Mr. Cherkasky stands in front of you in the opening statement and he said, John Gotti, and it's so dramatic, he walks back here, he points his finger, he had to send a message. He didn't walk further, he walked all the way over here. He had to send a message to this O'Connor because that's what he had to do. Look, any of you who are parents know that if your child does something wrong in February, you don't say, I'm going to hit you now in May. This makes no sense. There is no relationship between this conversation in February and what happened in May. And then Wright, because the investigator Wright, he was the one that first said it, Well, we didn't warn John O'Connor because we didn't think he was in imminent danger. Well, I say to investigator Wright, and I say to Mr. Cherkasky, if these conversations meant what they now say they mean, well, why wasn't he in imminent danger? You see, they take conversations and they twist them and they torture them, and Wright got his assignment. Here's the conclusion. We want to make this case against John Gotti. Now you go through these tapes, investigator Wright, and you find some words to support it. There's one conversation on March 8th. Either we give this guy it or yous do. And investigator Wright, 30 years a cop, says, of course I know what that means. John O'Connor's name was never mentioned. The restaurant was never mentioned. You give it to this guy, or we give it to this guy, or yous do. Well, if that really means what investigator Wright tells you and swears to you it means, because he is a psychic, He's able to read people's minds, He knows what people are thinking all the time, He's able to tell that that's what it meant. And this is what he heard, what was heard on March 8, 1986. Why didn't they warn him? They didn't warn him because these words never meant that. They didn't warn him because they're twisting and they're torturing the words to make it fit the theory of their case. And when Mr. Cherkasky stands before you, because I don't get a chance to speak again, but I'm going to make it easy for you. You don't have to learn a lot of words. When Mr. Cherkasky stands here and he says, this is on this conversation and this is on that conversation, you ask yourselves, why didn't you warn them? Why didn't you warn them if it says this? And don't let him tell you enhancement, because the cops said this is what they heard at the time. They went out and they said, this is what they heard at the time. Do you understand that after February of 1986, John O'Connor is never mentioned again on these tapes? Do you understand that after February of 1986, bankers and brokers is never mentioned again on these tapes? All you have is Investigator Wright, the expert, who sits up here and says, this means this and that means that. Someone says, I have to go see DeFeo, and I'm just taking one example. Oh, that's it. He has to see him? Oh, they're sure to shoot O'Connor. Or I have to go to this meeting, or Angelo calls someone to have a meeting. They didn't surveil the meeting. They didn't see the meeting. They don't know what took place at the meeting. That's it. He's going to a meeting. Call Lombardi's on Spring Street. That's a shooting for sure. That's it. You know, we heard it, and I'm sure that you can believe that beyond a reasonable doubt. Somebody mentions at the card game, the union and the carpenters and the cops. Oh, that's it. Unions, carpenters, cops. That's it. He's going to be shot. We know it. We can figure it out. You know, it would be a joke if two people weren't on trial, facing serious charges, and they have the audacity to suggest to you that this is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. This is this, and that is that, and this is what was on their mind. This was this, and that was that, and this is what was on their mind. John Gotti and Anthony Guerreri would have been arrested in 1986, not 1989. So understand it. These tapes do not make the case. And the transcripts, no matter how they twist them, and no matter how they torture them, and no matter how many times they change them, the transcripts do not make the case. You know, if you want any proof of that, I read the record over the weekend, beginning to end. And here's my vote for the silliest question of the whole trial. Mr. Cherkasky asked, if it was right, well, isn't it true that beside the conversations on these tapes, they talked elsewhere? Yes, they talked elsewhere. So what was it? They probably said things elsewhere that were incriminatory? They kidding or what? Maybe they said something elsewhere. Maybe they had a conversation that we didn't overhear. Maybe they said something at another time. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is not maybe. It's not it could be, it might be, it's possible. You don't ring the bell that Judge McLaughlin told you about. You don't ring the bell by saying maybe they talked elsewhere. So what does this come down to? James McElroy? James McElroy is the case, and James McElroy is the proof beyond a reasonable doubt. James McElroy, who told Detective Strip on the tape, I did things with him I didn't ever know I did. No wonder his girlfriend called him a bellhead. Not only, that's what she called him. Not only, and understand this, please. Understand it full well. Not only would you have to believe McElroy, you have to believe what McElroy says Coonan told him. So you have to believe Coonan as well, because McElroy said that all that he knew about John Gotti's, what he claims is John Gotti's involvement, he got from Coonan. Now this is some combination of people. You heard that Kevin Kelly wanted to kill Coonan. You heard that McElroy went to a meeting, he didn't warn Coonan, but he was at the meeting also in New Jersey with the silencers and 32s and bulletproof vests, you remember that. Coonan wanted to kill Kelly, and Coonan told Kelly and Shannon to kill McElroy. And this is the gang that you'd have to believe were telling the truth. Mr. Cherkasky's going to stand up here later today and say, hey, they tell the truth. They have no reason to lie. What did McElroy say about Coonan? He said,